The rain hammered against Daniel Hayes' door at 3 in the morning, but it wasn't the storm that made his blood run cold. It was the woman standing on his porch, soaked, trembling, desperate. Isabella Reed. Billionaire, CEO. The last person who should know where he lived, the last person he ever wanted to see again. Because 6 years ago, her company didn't just fire him, it destroyed everything he'd built, took his reputation, his career, his entire future, and left him with nothing but a daughter to raise and a past he couldn't outrun. Now she was here, asking for help, and Daniel had no idea that saving her tonight would drag them both into a conspiracy that would shatter everything they thought they knew about power, betrayal, and the price of truth. If you want to see where this storm leads, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The sound started small. A low hum Daniel Hayes had learned to ignore, the kind of white noise that filled the gaps in a repairman's life. But tonight, it was different. Tonight it cut through the steady drum of rain on the roof, through the static of the old TV he'd left on for company, through the careful quiet of a house where a 6-year-old slept upstairs. He pushed himself up from the couch, joints protesting. 32 wasn't old, but some days it felt ancient. The clock on the microwave read 3:17 a.m. in dim green numbers. The sound came again, not the hum this time, but something sharper. A knock. Daniel stood motionless in his narrow kitchen, listening. Maybe he'd imagined it. Maybe the storm was playing tricks. Rain hadn't let up in hours, turning the streets of his neighborhood into rivers, drowning the streetlights in sheets of water. The knock came again, louder, more insistent. "Christ," he muttered, moving toward the front door. Through the small window beside it, he could make out a shape, someone standing on his porch, hunched against the weather. Probably Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down, her basement flooding again. Or Rick from the corner store with another busted freezer that couldn't wait until morning. Daniel unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. The woman on his porch was not Mrs. Chen. She was younger than he'd expected from the desperate knocking. Maybe 30, though it was hard to tell through the rain-plastering dark hair to her face. She wore what might have been an expensive coat once, now soaked through and clinging to her frame. Her eyes were wide, pupils blown with something that looked like panic. "I need help," she said. Her voice was steady, but Daniel had worked enough emergency calls to recognize the thread of control holding back something larger. "Please, I know it's late, but I don't know who else—" She stopped. Her eyes had adjusted to the light from his doorway, and now she was really looking at him. Daniel watched recognition flicker across her face, followed immediately by confusion. "Do I—" she started. "No," Daniel said flatly. His hand was already moving to close the door. "Wait." She put her palm against the wood, not pushing, just holding. "Please. I'm not here because I didn't know this was your address. I swear. I need someone who can fix things. And the service I called gave me this address. And what service?" "Fast Fix Emergency Repair. They said you were the only technician in a 50-mile radius who could handle advanced home systems, and everything's failing and I don't—" Daniel's jaw tightened. Fast Fix was his employer, the bottom-tier repair company he'd been stuck with for the past 6 years. They knew exactly who he was. They knew exactly who she was. And they'd sent her here anyway, probably thinking it was funny. "I can't help you," he said. "Please." The word came out raw. "I don't care who you are or what. I just need— please." Something in her voice made him pause. Not the desperation. He'd heard plenty of desperate people. It was the edge underneath, the sound of someone who wasn't used to asking for anything and hated every second of it. He should close the door. Should tell her to call someone else, go to a hotel, deal with her failing mansion some other way. But his eyes had caught on her hands, braced against his doorframe, and he saw they were shaking. "What kind of system?" he asked. Relief crashed across her face so visibly that Daniel almost felt bad for what he was about to say. "Everything," she said. "Climate control, security, water, electrical. It's all integrated, and it's all failing. The backup generators kicked in, but they won't last, and I don't know what's happening. Call the company that installed it." "I tried. They're not answering. Emergency line goes to voicemail." She took a breath. "Look, I'll pay whatever you want. Triple your normal rate. I just need someone who understands complex systems. And apparently you're—" I'm not interested in your money. The words came out harder than he'd intended, and he saw her flinch. Good. Maybe she'd leave. Instead, she straightened, rain streaming off her coat onto his porch. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted, less pleading, more direct. My name is Isabella Reed. I own Reed Technologies. My house is 12 minutes from here, and if the system doesn't stabilize in the next hour, the whole building could flood, catch fire, or both. I have no family in the area, no friends I can call at 3 in the morning, and every professional service I've contacted is either closed or can't handle the technology. You're my last option. She met his eyes. So I'm asking, please, help me. Yes, sing. Daniel stared at her. Isabella Reed. He'd known the moment he saw her face, even through the rain and panic. 6 years ago, she'd been impossible to miss. Her image plastered across business magazines, news sites, talk shows, the youngest billionaire in the tech sector, the genius who'd revolutionized home automation, the CEO who'd built an empire on making the impossible look easy. She didn't remember him. Why would she? He'd been nobody. Just another name on a list of people her company had destroyed when they'd acquired his employer and gutted the workforce. But he remembered her. I'll get my tools, Daniel said. The drive to Isabella Reed's house was silent, except for the rain hammering his truck and the occasional direction she gave. Daniel kept his eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel, and tried not to think about what he was doing. This was stupid, monumentally stupid. Going back into her world even for one night, even for an emergency, it violated every rule he'd built for himself over the past 6 years. Stay invisible. Keep your head down. Raise your daughter. Don't look back. But Fast Fix would fire him if he turned down an emergency call, and he couldn't afford that. Not with Emma's school fees coming up. Not with the medical bills from last year still hovering over his bank account like a threat. Left here, Isabella said. Daniel turned onto a private road he'd never noticed before, tree-lined and expensive. The rain had turned it into something close to a stream, water rushing across the asphalt in sheets. His truck handled it, barely. How long has the system been failing? He asked. Started about 90 minutes ago. Climate control first, temperature spiking and dropping randomly. Then the lights started flickering. Then the security system locked me out of half the house. Then everything went to hell. Essentially, yes. They rounded a curve and Daniel got his first look at Isabella Reed's house. Calling it a house was generous. It was a compound, all glass and steel and impossible angles, perched on the hillside like something that had landed there from another century. Even through the rain, he could see lights blazing erratically through different sections, flickering and shifting in ways that made his stomach drop. Jesus, he muttered. It wasn't supposed to be able to do this, Isabella said quietly. The system was designed with redundancies, fail-safes, isolated subsections. If one area failed, the others would compensate. But it's like something's attacking it all at once. She looked at him sharply. Yes, exactly like that. Daniel pulled his truck up to the main entrance and killed the engine. Rain drummed on the roof, almost deafening. When we get inside, he said, I need you to show me the central control panel, and I need access to your system's diagnostic logs. I'll give you whatever you need. They ran for the entrance, both soaked within seconds. Isabella's hand shook as she pressed her palm to the security panel beside the door. It flashed red 3 times before finally reading her print and sliding open. The interior of the house was chaos. Lights flickered overhead, too bright, then too dim, then bright again in arrhythmic pulses. The temperature was wrong. Swinging between sauna and freezer in waves, Daniel could actually feel as they moved through the foyer. Somewhere deeper in the house, an alarm was screaming. Control room is this way, Isabella said, already moving. Daniel followed her through a hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows, rain streaming down the glass like they were underwater. The alarm got louder. His repair bag felt heavy on his shoulder. The control room turned out to be a small office with 3 massive screens taking up most of one wall. All 3 were displaying error messages in cascading red text, updating faster than Daniel could read. Christ, he said again. He dropped his bag and moved to the central console, fingers already flying over the keyboard. How many systems are integrated? 47 primary, 112 secondary. And they're all connected to the same network? Yes, it was supposed to be more efficient. It's a single point of failure. Daniel pulled up a diagnostic interface, eyes scanning the data flooding across the screen. Whoever designed this was brilliant and stupid in exactly equal measure. I designed it, Isabella said coolly. Daniel didn't look up. Then you're brilliant and stupid in equal measure. He expected anger. Instead, she laughed, a short, sharp sound that held no humor. Fair enough, she said. Daniel's fingers moved faster, pulling up system logs, tracing the cascade of failures backward. The data was dense, overwhelming, but his brain was already sorting it, finding patterns. This was what he'd been good at once, before everything fell apart. Before he'd spent 6 years fixing broken dishwashers and busted air conditioners for people who saw him as invisible. There, he said, pointing at a section of code. See that? Your security system received an external access request at 1:47 a.m. It authenticated, which means someone had valid credentials. Isabella leaned over his shoulder, close enough that he could smell something expensive and rain-soaked. That's impossible. I'm the only one with admin access. Clearly, you're not. Daniel pulled up another screen. Whoever got in went straight for your environmental controls and started running them through random cycles. Not enough to trigger immediate alarms, just enough to stress the system. Then they hit your electrical grid, your water management, your backup generators, all within 20 minutes. Why? To make it look like a cascade failure. To make you think the system itself was broken. But it's not broken. No, Daniel said. It's being attacked. The words hung in the air between them. Isabella's face had gone very pale. Who would? I don't know. But they knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't random. This was surgical. Daniel's hands were already moving again, isolating systems, building temporary firewalls, rerouting power. It was like solving a three-dimensional puzzle while the pieces kept shifting. Difficult. Dangerous. Exactly the kind of work he used to live for. Can you stop it? Isabella asked. I can stabilize it. Stopping it means finding whoever's inside your system and cutting them off. He pulled up another diagnostic screen. How much do you trust your installation company? Completely. They've handled security for half the Fortune 500. Then either they're compromised or someone stole their credentials. Daniel's eyes caught on a string of code that made his blood run cold. Or both. What is it? This. He pointed at the screen. See these access logs? Whoever's in your system has been here before multiple times, going back months. Isabella's hand gripped the back of his chair. That's not possible. It's happening. They've been inside your house, watching your systems, learning the architecture. This wasn't an attack. This was a plan. Why would someone... The screens went black. All three of them, simultaneously. The room plunged into darkness, broken only by emergency lights kicking in along the baseboards. The alarm that had been screaming somewhere in the house cut off mid-wail. Backup generators? Daniel asked, already knowing the answer. Should have kicked in by now. They did. Someone just turned them off. Daniel pulled out his phone, using the flashlight to illuminate the console. The screens were dead, but the system itself was still running. He could hear the quiet hum of the servers in the walls. We need to get to the main electrical panel, he said. Manually restart the generators and isolate the network. Basement, I'll show you. They moved through the dark house together, emergency lights casting everything in sickly green. Daniel's mind was racing. This wasn't just sabotage. This was personal. The level of knowledge required to execute an attack like this. The patience to plant access over months. The timing. Someone wanted to hurt Isabella Reed specifically. The basement was vast and cold, filled with the humming machinery that kept the house alive. Isabella led him to a panel set into the far wall, fingers fumbling with the access code. Let me, Daniel said. He pulled a screwdriver from his bag and had the panel open in seconds. Inside was a nightmare of circuitry, half of it jury-rigged in ways that made his teeth hurt. Who did your electrical work? He asked. A contractor. Why? Because they were either incompetent or actively trying to make this easier to sabotage. Daniel started pulling connections, testing voltages, mapping the system in his head. Half these circuits are running through relays that shouldn't exist. You could trigger a cascade failure just by... The lights came back on. Not the emergency lights, the full house lighting system, blazing so bright that both of them flinched. Daniel's hands froze on the wiring. "Did you do that?" Isabella asked. "No." The lights started strobing. Fast, then faster, then so fast it was like standing inside a lightning storm. Daniel's vision swam. Beside him, Isabella made a sound of pain. "Close your eyes," he said. His hands were moving on instinct now, tracing circuits, finding the main power line. "I'm going to kill the whole system. You'll shut down everything. We don't have a choice." Daniel found the main breaker and threw it. The lights died. The humming stopped. The house went completely, utterly silent. For a moment, neither of them moved. Daniel's heart was hammering against his ribs. The darkness was total, pressing in from all sides. Then Isabella's phone lit up, casting pale blue light across her face. "We should go upstairs," she said quietly, "before whoever's doing this decides to try something else." They sat in Isabella's kitchen, the one room in the house that apparently ran on its own isolated circuit. A single overhead light illuminated the space, casting long shadows. Daniel had his laptop open on the marble counter, running diagnostics on the system logs he'd managed to copy before killing the power. Isabella made coffee, actual coffee, in a French press, like they weren't sitting in the aftermath of what might have been the most sophisticated cyber attack Daniel had seen in years. "You know what you're doing," she said. It wasn't a question. Daniel didn't look up from his screen. "I used to." "Used to?" "Long time ago. Different life." She set a mug in front of him. The coffee smelled expensive. Daniel wrapped his hands around it and let the warmth seep into his fingers. "Fast fix emergency repair doesn't usually employ people with your skill set," Isabella said. "No, they don't." "So how did you end up there?" Daniel looked at her then, really looked. She'd dried off somewhat, changed into dry clothes, jeans, and a sweater that probably cost more than his truck. Her dark hair was pulled back, and without the rain and panic, he could see the face he remembered from 6 years ago. Older now, tired, but still her. "You really don't remember me," he said. Isabella frowned. "Should I? 6 years ago, your company acquired Bennett Systems Integration. Small firm, about 40 employees. You kept 12. Fired the rest." He watched her face change as she worked through the memory. He watched. Her company had acquired a lot of small firms back then, gutted them for patents and personnel, discarded the rest. "You worked for Bennett," she said slowly. "I was Bennett, Chief Systems Architect. We just landed a major government contract when your company showed up with an offer we couldn't refuse. Except we should have refused it. I didn't handle the personnel decisions. That was your CFO, Marcus Chen, I remember." Daniel turned back to his laptop. He decided most of us were redundant, fired us all on the same day, 2 weeks before Christmas. Made us sign ND, as that basically ensured we'd never work in the industry again. The silence stretched between them. When Isabella spoke again, her voice was careful. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." "Why would you? You were busy building an empire." "That's not fair." "No," Daniel agreed. "It's not. But it's true." He pulled up a new screen, fingers moving across the keyboard. The code was starting to make sense now, patterns emerging from the chaos. "The person in your system knows what they're doing," he said. "This isn't script kiddie stuff. This is professional grade work. Someone with deep knowledge of your architecture and the patience to execute a long-term plan." "Who?" "That's the question." Daniel highlighted a section of code. "But I think I can find out. Whoever did this left traces. They were careful, but nobody's perfect. If I can access your security footage from the past 6 months, cross-reference it with these access logs. You want to stay? Keep working on this?" Daniel's hands stilled on the keyboard. That was a good question. The smart answer was no. Take his emergency fee. Go home. Forget this ever happened. Let Isabella Reed deal with her own problems. But his eyes kept returning to the code on his screen, the elegant maliciousness of it. Whoever had done this was good. Better than good. And something about the attack felt familiar in a way Daniel couldn't quite place. 24 hours, he said. "I'll figure out who did this and how to stop them. Then I'm gone. What's your rate?" $200 an hour. It was more than Fast Fix charged, but less than she'd pay any legitimate security firm. Isabella didn't even blink. "Done." I'll set you up in the guest house. You'll have full access to the system, all the security footage, whatever you need. I'll need to go home first. My daughter. You have a daughter? Something shifted in Isabella's expression. 6 years old. She's with a sitter right now, but I need to be there when she wakes up. Of course, I'll have my driver take you. You can come back whenever you're ready. Daniel shook his head. I'll drive myself, and I'll be back this afternoon. He started packing up his equipment, closing the laptop, coiling cables. Isabella watched him work with an expression he couldn't quite read. Thank you, she said finally, for helping, even after... Thank you, Daniel nodded. He didn't trust himself to say anything else. The drive home took 20 minutes through rain that had finally started to ease. Daniel kept his hands steady on the wheel and his mind carefully blank, not letting himself think about what he'd just agreed to. He pulled into his driveway just as dawn was breaking, the sky turning from black to gray. The house was dark. Mrs. Patterson's car was still in his driveway. She must have fallen asleep on the couch again. Daniel let himself in quietly. Mrs. Patterson was indeed asleep, snoring softly. He grabbed a blanket from the hall closet and draped it over her, then headed upstairs. Emma's room was at the end of the hall, door half open the way she liked it. Daniel eased it wider and looked in. His daughter was sprawled across her bed in a tangle of blankets and stuffed animals, dark hair fanned across her pillow. She looked so small, so unbearably young. 6 years old, and already she'd dealt with more than most kids her age. A mother who'd left, a father who worked too much, a life that was always one disaster away from falling apart. Daniel had built this fragile stability for her, kept them afloat, kept them safe. And now he was about to risk it all because he couldn't walk away from a problem that wasn't his to solve. Stupid, he whispered to himself. But even as he said it, his mind was already back in Isabella's control room, watching code cascade across screens, feeling that old familiar pull of a puzzle he couldn't leave unsolved. He closed Emma's door and went to grab a few hours of sleep. He'd need it, because whoever had attacked Isabella Reed's system wasn't done. Daniel could feel it in the patterns of the code, in the careful patience of the attack. This was just the beginning. And somehow, without quite knowing how, Daniel had just put himself and his daughter directly in the middle of it. Emma was already awake when Daniel opened his eyes, her small face hovering inches from his, blue eyes wide and curious. "You're home," she said. Daniel's heart did that thing it always did when he saw her first thing, a painful squeeze of love mixed with terror that he was somehow failing her. He blinked sleep from his eyes and checked the clock. 7:30. He'd managed maybe 2 hours. "Yeah, Bug, I'm home. Mrs. Patterson said you had an emergency job. Was it a big one?" "Pretty big." Daniel sat up, his back protesting. He'd fallen asleep in his clothes, still smelling like rain and Isabella Reed's expensive house. "How was your night?" "Good. We made popcorn and watched a movie about penguins. Did you know penguins can hold their breath for 20 minutes? I did not know that." Emma climbed onto the bed beside him, settling into the crook of his arm like she'd done since she was tiny. 6 years old and already growing too fast, her legs getting longer, her face losing that baby roundness. Sometimes Daniel looked at her and saw her mother, the same dark hair, the same stubborn chin, and it hurt in ways he didn't have words for. "Can we make pancakes?" Emma asked. "Pancakes sound good." They went downstairs together. Mrs. Patterson was in the kitchen, already putting on coffee. She was 72, lived 3 houses down, and had been saving Daniel's life on irregular schedules for the past 4 years. "Rough night?" she asked, taking in his appearance. "Long one. Thanks for staying." "Any time, sweetheart. You know that." She grabbed her purse from the counter. "I've got bridge club at 9, but I can cancel if you need." "No, we're good. I've got the day." That was a lie. Daniel needed to get back to Isabella's house, needed to dig into those security logs before whoever had attacked her system made another move. But looking at Emma, already pulling the pancake mix from the cabinet with the serious concentration she brought to everything, he couldn't make himself leave. Not yet. Mrs. Patterson left. Daniel made pancakes while Emma narrated facts about Antarctic wildlife she'd learned from the documentary. The kitchen was warm and smelled like butter and syrup, and for a little while Daniel let himself pretend this was all there was, just him and his daughter and a quiet morning. Then his phone rang. Isabella Reed's name flashed on the screen. Daniel almost didn't answer. But he'd made a deal, and he needed the money. And somewhere in the back of his mind, that old compulsion was already pulling at him. The need to solve the puzzle, to understand what he'd seen in her code. Hello? Daniel? I'm sorry to call so early, but we have a problem. Her voice was tight, controlled in that way that meant she was barely holding it together. Daniel felt his stomach drop. What happened? Barum. The system came back online an hour ago, on its own. I didn't touch anything, didn't restart anything. It just... She took a breath. Every security camera in the house recorded footage last night. I just watched it. Someone was here, inside the house, while we were in the basement. Daniel's hand tightened on the phone. Are you sure? I'm looking at the footage right now. 4th floor, East Wing, a man. I don't recognize him, but he knew exactly where to go, exactly what he was doing. Daniel, he was in my office. He accessed my personal computer. Call the police. I can't. What do you mean you can't? There was a long pause. When Isabella spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, more uncertain. There are things on that computer, files, information that if it got out, I can't have the police involved. Not yet. Not until I know what was taken. Daniel looked at Emma, happily drowning her pancakes in syrup. Every instinct he had was screaming at him to stay out of this, to tell Isabella Reed to find someone else, to protect the small, safe life he'd built. I need 4 hours, he said. Then I'll come back. Thank you. She hung up. Daniel set the phone down and tried to focus on breakfast, on Emma's chatter, on anything except the ice forming in his chest. Someone had been inside Isabella's house. While they'd been in the basement dealing with the system failure, someone had been upstairs, moving through her home like they owned it. This wasn't just sabotage. This was invasion. Daddy? Emma was looking at him with those too perceptive eyes. Are you okay? Yeah, Bug. Just thinking about work. Is it the emergency job? Yeah. Are you going back today? Daniel hesitated. He'd never lied to Emma, made it a policy after her mother left. She deserved honesty, even when it was hard. Probably, for a few hours. But Mrs. Patterson can come back, or I can call Jenny from down the street. Can I come with you? What? To the job. Can I come? Emma's eyes were bright with interest. I promise I'll be good. I'll bring my books and my drawing stuff, and I won't bother you while you work. It's not... I don't think that's a good idea, Bug. Please? I never get to see what you do, and you said it's a big job, right? That means it's important. I want to see important. Daniel opened his mouth to say no. The last thing he needed was Emma anywhere near Isabella Reed's chaos. But looking at his daughter's hopeful face, he found himself remembering all the times he'd promised to take her to work, to show her what he did, and then never followed through because his work was fixing broken appliances in strangers' houses. And that wasn't exactly inspiring. Let me make a call, he said. He went into the living room and dialed Isabella's number. She picked up on the first ring. Daniel? Quick question. Would you mind if I brought my daughter with me today? I know it's not professional, but she's on fall break and my sitter's not available and, of course, bring her. I'll have the guest house set up for you both. You don't have to... I want to. Please. And Daniel? Her voice softened slightly. I have a 7-year-old niece. I understand. Well, He hung up feeling off balance. Isabella Reed understanding childcare complications wasn't something he'd expected. It made her harder to keep at a distance, harder to remember as just the CEO who'd destroyed his career. Emma was ecstatic. She raced upstairs to pack a bag while Daniel gathered his equipment, trying to ignore the voice in his head that kept insisting this was a terrible idea. By 9:30, they were in the truck, Emma chattering excitedly about the big house she was going to see, Daniel gripping the wheel and wondering what the hell he was doing. The drive took 25 minutes. In daylight, without rain, the private road to Isabella's house looked different, almost beautiful, lined with old trees that formed a canopy overhead. Emma pressed her nose to the window, eyes wide. Whoa! She breathed as the house came into view. It was impressive in daylight. The glass and steel caught the morning sun, turning the whole structure into something that looked more like art than architecture. Daniel could admit, grudgingly, that it was stunning. Isabella met them at the door. She'd changed again, now wearing dark pants and a crisp white shirt that screamed professional CEO. But her eyes were shadowed with exhaustion, and Daniel noticed her hand shook slightly as she extended it to Emma. "You must be Emma. I'm Isabella. You have a really big house," Emma said, with the blunt honesty of 6-year-olds. Isabella's laugh was surprised and genuine. "I do. It's probably too big, honestly. Would you like to see it?" She gave them a tour while Daniel carried his equipment, pointing out features that made Emma gasp. The indoor pool, the library with its spiral staircase, the glass-walled room that overlooked the valley. Emma asked 1,000 questions, and Isabella answered all of them with a patience Daniel hadn't expected. The guest house turned out to be a small cottage behind the main building, with 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, and windows that looked out over a garden. It was nicer than Daniel's actual house. "Make yourselves comfortable," Isabella said. "I set up a workspace in the main house for you, Daniel, whenever you're ready." "Give me 10 minutes. He got Emma settled with her books and drawing supplies, made her promise to stay in the cottage, and then followed Isabella back to the main house. She led him to a room he hadn't seen during the night, a converted library with 3 massive monitors and enough computing power to run a small country. "This was my husband's office," Isabella said quietly. "Before he died, Daniel hadn't known she'd been married, hadn't known she was a widow, another piece that didn't fit his mental image of her. "I'm sorry," he said. "It was 4 years ago. Car accident." She moved to the monitors and pulled up a video file. "This is the footage from last night." The video showed a hallway, empty and dark. The timestamp read 3:47 a.m., right when Daniel and Isabella had been in the basement. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then a figure moved into frame. Male, average height, wearing dark clothes and a mask that covered most of his face. He moved with confidence, no hesitation, heading straight for a door at the end of the hall. The camera angle changed, showing him inside what must be Isabella's office. He went directly to her desk, pulled a small device from his pocket, and plugged it into her computer. "Data transfer," Daniel said. He knew exactly what he was looking for. "Watch what he does next." On screen, the man stood motionless for 2 minutes while the device did its work. Then he pulled it out, pocketed it, and turned to face the camera directly. For just a moment, his eyes were visible through the mask. And Daniel's blood turned to ice. He knew those eyes, knew the exact tilt of that head, the particular way the shoulders were set. He'd worked with this man for 3 years, had trusted him, had considered him a friend. "Do you recognize him?" Isabella asked. Daniel couldn't speak. His throat had closed up, his mind racing through implications and connections and a past he'd thought was dead and buried. "Daniel?" "His name is Marcus Webb," Daniel heard himself say. "He was my partner at Bennett Systems." The silence that followed was absolute. Isabella stared at him, and Daniel saw her working through the connections, the timeline, the significance. "Your partner," she repeated slowly, "from the company we acquired." "Yeah, he was one of the 12 people your CFO kept. Hired him away from me with a salary I couldn't match and a position I couldn't offer." Daniel's hands had curled into fists without him noticing. "I haven't seen him in 6 years. Thought he was still working for Reed Technologies." Was. I don't..." Isabella pulled up something on another monitor. "He's been my head of security systems integration for the past 4 years. Handles all the advanced automation projects. Has access to..." She stopped. Her face had gone pale. "He has access to everything," she finished quietly. Daniel's mind was putting pieces together faster than he could process them. Marcus in Isabella's company. Marcus with access to her systems. Marcus who knew Daniel better than almost anyone, who knew exactly what skills he had, who would know that a catastrophic system failure would bring Daniel running if the repair company called him. "This wasn't random," Daniel said. "He wanted me here, wanted me to see this." "Why?" "I don't know yet, but Marcus doesn't do anything without a reason." Daniel pulled up the security logs he'd copied last night, started cross-referencing them with employment records Isabella pulled up. Show me everything you have on him. Personnel file, project history, access logs, everything. They worked in focused silence for an hour. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Marcus had been with Reed Technologies for 4 years, and in that time he'd positioned himself as indispensable. Every major system in Isabella's house had his fingerprints on it. Every security protocol had a backdoor he'd designed. He built this access over years, Daniel said, highlighting a particularly elegant piece of code. Slow, patient, impossible to detect unless you knew exactly what to look for. What? But why? He has a good job, good salary. What does he gain from sabotaging my house? That's not the right question. Daniel pulled up another file. The question is, what does he gain from bringing me into this? His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Figured it out yet, Danny? Check your email. But wash moment. Daniel's hands went cold. He opened his laptop, logged into the ancient email account he hadn't used in years. There was one new message, no subject line, from an address he didn't recognize. The email contained a single video file. Daniel clicked it with a sense of dread he couldn't name. The video showed an office, his old office at Bennett Systems. The timestamp was from 6 years ago, 2 weeks before the acquisition. And on screen, talking to someone off camera, was Daniel himself. Younger Daniel. Tired Daniel. Desperate Daniel, talking about the government contract they'd just landed, about the surveillance technology they'd developed, about how it would change everything. And then the camera panned to show who he was talking to. Marcus Webb. Only Marcus looked different in the video. Professional, cold. And he was taking notes on everything Daniel said. The video ended. A new text came through. You never wondered why Reed Technologies wanted Bennett so badly. It wasn't the company. It was the tech. Your tech. The surveillance system you designed. Isabella's been using it for years, Daniel. In every house she builds, every system she integrates, making billions off your work while you fix broken dishwashers. Want to know the best part? She has no idea. Daniel's vision tunneled. He was distantly aware of Isabella saying his name, asking what was wrong, but he couldn't focus on her. His mind was back 6 years, remembering meetings with Marcus. Conversations about their technology, the excitement of finally landing something big. He'd told Marcus everything, had trusted him completely, and Marcus had sold him out. Daniel. Isabella's hand on his arm, firm and insistent. Talk to me. What's in that email? Right? He showed her the video without speaking, watched her face change as she processed what she was seeing. When it ended, she was very still. That surveillance technology, she said slowly. The integrated monitoring system that's in all my home automation projects. Marcus presented that to me 3 years ago, said it was his design. It wasn't. It was mine. From Bennett Systems. Daniel's voice sounded distant to his own ears. The government contract we'd landed, it was for a surveillance system that could integrate with existing infrastructure, impossible to detect, capable of monitoring everything. We were going to use it for embassy security, foreign intelligence gathering. It was classified work, and Marcus stole it. Not just stole it, he engineered the entire acquisition, fed your company information about Bennett, made sure you knew about the contract, positioned himself as the key person to keep when you gutted the workforce. Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. I thought I'd lost everything in that acquisition. Turns out I lost it before the acquisition even happened. His phone buzzed again. Lobby of the Meridian Hotel. 1 hour. Come alone, or Emma finds out exactly what kind of man her father really is. Daniel's heart stopped. He read the message again, then a third time, the words blurring. He knows about Emma, he said quietly. Isabella leaned over to read the message. Her expression hardened. Don't go. We call the police, get protection, and tell them what? That a current employee of yours accessed your house, which he has legitimate clearance to do? That he sent me a video about technology from 6 years ago? That he made a vague threat about my daughter? Daniel stood, his chair scraping back. We have nothing concrete, nothing that would hold up. And meanwhile, Emma's in your guest house, and Marcus knows exactly where she is. Then we move her, take her somewhere safe. Pay. Imul. There is nowhere safe, not from Marcus. Daniel was already moving toward the door. He's always 3 steps ahead, always has contingencies. If I don't show up, he'll escalate. You can't just... I have to. Daniel stopped, looked back at her. But I need you to do something for me. Stay with Emma. Don't let her out of your sight. If anything happens, if anyone approaches the property, you take her and you run. Daniel, promise me. Isabella's jaw was tight, but she nodded. I promise. But you're not going alone. The message said, I don't care what the message said. You're not going to face this man alone. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling my head of personal security. He can be here in 20 minutes. Marcus will know. So, let him know. I'm done being careful with someone who's been invading my home for years. Isabella's eyes were hard. We do this smart. You go to the meeting, but you're wired. My security team will be close enough to intervene if things go wrong. And I stay here with Emma, with enough protection to hold off a small army if necessary. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was better than walking in blind and alone. Daniel nodded. 20 minutes. Isabella made the calls. Within 15 minutes, a man arrived who introduced himself as Cole, ex-military, built like a wall, with eyes that missed nothing. He handed Daniel a small earpiece and a device that clipped to his belt. Audio and GPS, Cole said. We'll be able to hear everything and track your location. Don't worry about being subtle with it. If this Marcus is as smart as you say, he'll know you're wired anyway. The point is making sure he knows we're listening. What if he searches me? Then you tell him the device will send an alert if it's disconnected, which it will. Cole checked his watch. We should move. I want to scout the hotel before you arrive. Daniel went back to the guest house. Emma was curled up on the couch, halfway through a drawing of what looked like the main house rendered in crayon and imagination. She looked up when he entered, smiling. Hey, Bug. I have to run an errand. Isabella's going to stay with you, okay? Okay? Is it for the job? Yeah, for the job. Daniel knelt down beside her. Emma, I need you to listen carefully. While I'm gone, you stay right here. You don't leave the cottage. You don't answer the door for anyone except me or Isabella. Understand? Her smile faded. Daddy, you're scaring me. I'm sorry. I don't mean to. He pulled her into a hug, feeling the fragile weight of her against his chest. 6 years old, and already she'd learned to read his moods, to sense when something was wrong. Everything's fine. I just need to know you're safe. I'll be good. I know you will. I love you, Bug. Love you too. Isabella was waiting outside. She walked with him to his truck, her expression troubled. Be careful, she said. Always am. I mean it, Daniel. Marcus clearly has a plan. Don't underestimate him. I won't. I know what he's capable of. Daniel climbed into the truck. If anything happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. If it does, Emma has an aunt in Portland, Sarah Hayes. She's in my phone. Call her. Daniel, just promise me. Isabella's eyes were bright with something that might have been fear. I promise. Now go. And come back. The drive to the Meridian Hotel took 30 minutes through downtown traffic. Daniel spent it listening to Cole's voice in his earpiece, calling out positions as the security team spread out around the hotel. His hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind was racing. Marcus had spent 6 years planning this. 6 years positioning himself, stealing Daniel's work, building his invasion of Isabella's systems. The question was why? What was the endgame? What did Marcus gain from bringing Daniel into this now? The Meridian was downtown, all glass and expensive modern architecture. Daniel parked in the garage and took the elevator to the lobby. It was massive, designed to impress, with marble floors and a ceiling 3 stories high. Marcus was sitting in one of the leather chairs near the windows, looking exactly like Daniel remembered. A little older, a little grayer, but still with that same calm confidence that had once made Daniel trust him. Danny, Marcus said, standing, you look like hell. Yeah, well, long night. Daniel stayed several feet away, hands visible. What do you want, Marcus? To talk. That's all. Just a conversation between old friends. We're not friends. No? Marcus tilted his head. We used to be, remember? Back when we were going to change the world together. Build something that mattered. Before you sold me out. Before I made the smart play. Marcus's smile was thin. You were always too idealistic, Danny. Too focused on what was right instead of what was profitable. Bennett Systems was going nowhere. The government contract would have paid for 1 year, maybe 2. Then what? Then we would have built something else. No. Then we would have failed, because you don't know how to play the game. Marcus gestured around the lobby. I do. I knew Reed Technologies was looking for surveillance tech. Knew Isabella Reed was desperate for innovation after her husband died. Knew that if I positioned it right, I could walk away with millions. Using my technology. Our technology. You designed it, sure, but I made it profitable. I made it matter. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Do you have any idea how much money that system has made? Hundreds of millions, maybe billions by now. And Isabella doesn't even know where it came from. Daniel's hands curled into fists. So this is what? You wanted to gloat? Make sure I knew what I'd lost? No, Danny. I wanted to give you a choice. What choice? Marcus pulled a tablet from his bag and slid it across the table. Daniel picked it up, his stomach sinking as he read. It was a contract, a partnership agreement, naming Daniel as co-developer of the surveillance system. 50% ownership, retroactive to 3 years ago. The numbers at the bottom made his head spin. $400 million, Marcus said quietly. Your share. All you have to do is sign. Daniel stared at the screen. $400 million. Enough to never worry about money again. Enough to give Emma everything, the best schools, the best opportunities, a future without struggle. Why? He asked. Because Reed Technologies is going public next year, and when they do, there's going to be scrutiny, audits, questions about where the technology came from. If those questions lead back to Bennett Systems, to you, to stolen classified government work, Marcus shrugged. It all falls apart. But if you're a partner, if you've been willingly working with me this whole time, then it's just a successful business venture. You're covering your tracks. I'm making us both rich. There's a difference. Daniel looked at the contract again. The numbers were real, the offer was real, and all he had to do was sign, agree that he'd been part of this from the beginning, legitimize the theft of his own work. And if I say no? He asked. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something cold moved behind his eyes. Then things get complicated. See, I have documentation showing you sold the surveillance tech to me 6 years ago. Signed contracts, money transfers, the whole paper trail. Completely fabricated, of course, but very convincing. No one would believe that. Domans. Maybe not, but it would raise questions about you, about Bennett Systems, about that classified government contract. And the thing about classified work, Danny, it's not hard to make someone look like a security risk. A few anonymous tips, some carefully leaked documents, and suddenly you're under federal investigation. Daniel's blood ran cold. You wouldn't. Ish. I would. And I'd make sure Emma knew all about it. About how her father sold military secrets, about how everything she has came from treason. Marcus leaned forward. Or you could sign the contract, be a partner, be rich, give your daughter the life she deserves. In Daniel's ear, Cole's voice. We can move in. Just say the word. But Daniel barely heard him. He was looking at Marcus, at the man he'd once trusted, and seeing clearly for the first time how thoroughly he'd been played. 6 years ago, last night, this moment right now. You broke into Isabella's house, Daniel said slowly. Triggered the system failure, made sure the repair company called me. All of it. It was theater. To get me here, to this moment. See? You're still sharp. Marcus smiled. I knew you'd figure it out. That's why this works, Danny. You're smart enough to understand what I'm offering. Smart enough to take it. Daniel set the tablet down on the table between them. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. No. Marcus's smile faded. That's a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake. Daniel stood. I'm not signing anything. I'm not legitimizing what you stole. And if you come near my daughter, if you so much as think about her, I will burn your entire world down. With what? You have nothing. I have the truth. I have 6 years of access logs showing you building backdoors into Isabella's systems. I have video of you breaking into her house. I have the original Bennett Systems files proving the surveillance tech was mine. Daniel leaned down, his face inches from Marcus's. And I have Isabella Reed, who's had just about enough of people using her. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Marcus's face. You told her? Every word. She's downloading your employment records right now. By the time I get back, we'll have enough evidence to bury you. Marcus stood abruptly. You're bluffing. Am I? Marcus stood. Daniel pulled out his phone, showed him a text from Isabella. Found the paper trail Marcus has been embezzling for months. Calling my lawyers now. The color drained from Marcus's face. That's not... I didn't what? Embezzle? No, you're too smart for that. But Isabella's lawyers will look anyway. And while they're looking, they'll find all the other things you've been hiding. Daniel pocketed his phone. You wanted to play games, Marcus. Congratulations. You just lost. He turned and walked away, half expecting Marcus to call after him, to threaten, to do something. But there was only silence. Cole's voice in his ear. That was either very brave or very stupid. Burst. Probably both, Daniel muttered. He made it to the parking garage before his legs started shaking, leaned against his truck and tried to breathe through the adrenaline crash. $400 million. He just walked away from $400 million. His phone rang. Isabella? You okay? She asked. Yeah, on my way back. Is Emma? She's fine, safe, drawing pictures of penguins now. A pause. Daniel, I didn't actually find any embezzlement evidence. I know, I was bluffing. That was stupid. I know, but Marcus doesn't know that, and he will panic. People like him always panic when they lose control. Daniel climbed into his truck. We need to move fast. He'll try to cover his tracks, destroy evidence. We have maybe 12 hours before he disappears or makes this worse. Then we'd better get to work. Daniel drove back toward Isabella's house, his mind already racing ahead. They had pieces of the puzzle now. Marcus's access, the stolen technology, the years of manipulation. But they needed more. They needed proof that would stand up, that couldn't be explained away or buried. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Daniel knew this was just the beginning. Marcus didn't lose, didn't give up. Whatever came next would be worse. But for the first time in 6 years, Daniel felt something other than resignation. He felt angry. He felt focused. He felt alive. The first sign something had changed came when Daniel pulled through Isabella's gate and found it standing open. Not damaged, not forced, just open, like someone had waltzed through without bothering to close it behind them. His foot hit the brake hard enough to make the truck lurch. Cole's voice crackled in the earpiece he'd forgotten he was still wearing. Daniel? What's wrong? The gate's open. It shouldn't be open. I'm 3 minutes out. Don't go in alone. Go. But Daniel was already moving, foot back on the gas, truck surging up the private road faster than was smart. His mind was cycling through worst-case scenarios, each one worse than the last. Marcus moving faster than expected. Someone else involved. Emma in danger. The main house looked normal when it came into view. No broken windows, no obvious signs of intrusion. Daniel abandoned the truck in the circular drive and ran for the guest cottage, his heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat. The cottage door was locked. He fumbled with the key Isabella had given him, finally got it open, burst inside. Emma looked up from the couch, startled. Isabella was beside her, a book open between them. Both of them were fine, completely, utterly fine. Daddy? Emma's face scrunched with confusion. You're back fast. Daniel couldn't speak for a moment, just stood there breathing hard, trying to slow his pulse down from panic levels. Sorry, he managed. I thought the gate was open. I had Cole open it remotely, Isabella said, standing. He said you were on your way back, and I thought it would be easier than making you wait. She took in his expression. What happened at the hotel? Can we talk? Somewhere Emma can't hear? Isabella nodded. She told Emma they'd be right outside, and the two of them stepped onto the cottage's small porch. The afternoon sun was warm, at odds with the ice in Daniel's chest. Marcus tried to buy me off, Daniel said quietly. $400 million to sign a contract saying I'd been his partner all along. To legitimize the stolen technology. Isabella's eyes widened. That's a lot of money. Yeah, I turned him down. Why? The question caught him off guard. Daniel looked at her, at this woman whose life he'd stumbled into less than 24 hours ago, and tried to find words for something he barely understood himself. Because it would have meant agreeing that what he did was okay. That stealing my work and destroying my career and leaving me with nothing was just business. He shook his head. I can't give him that, even for $400 million. Isabella was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. My husband used to say that integrity is what you do when no one's watching and there's no reward for doing the right thing. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. He was better at it than I am. What do you mean? I built my company on Marcus's technology, made billions from it, never asked where it came from, never questioned the timeline, never looked too closely at anything that might slow down the growth. Isabella's hands curled into fists at her sides. I was so focused on building something, on being successful, on proving I could do it without my husband, that I didn't see what was right in front of me. You couldn't have known. I should have known. That's the point. She turned to face him fully. Daniel, I need to tell you something. After you left this morning, I started going through Marcus's project files, all of them, from the past 4 years. The surveillance technology isn't the only thing he stole. Daniel's stomach dropped. What else? Everything. Every major innovation Reed Technologies has introduced in the past 4 years has Marcus's fingerprints on it. And the more I dig, the more I find connections to other companies we acquired, other small firms that got gutted. She pulled out her phone, showed him a spreadsheet that made his head spin. Bennett Systems wasn't the first. It was the 5th, maybe the 10th. I don't even know the full count yet. He's been doing this for years, longer than that. I hired him 4 years ago, but his employment records show inconsistencies, gaps, references that don't check out when you actually call them. Isabella's voice was shaking slightly. I think Marcus Webb might not even be his real name. The world tilted slightly. Daniel sat down on the porch steps, trying to process this. Who the hell is he then? I don't know, but I have people looking into it. Real investigators, not just lawyers. Isabella sat beside him. There's more. The surveillance technology. Your technology. It's not just in my home automation systems. Marcus has been licensing it to third parties. Foreign companies, shell corporations, entities I can't even trace. Whatever you designed 6 years ago, it's out there now, being used for things you never intended. Daniel's hands went cold. The surveillance system he'd designed for Bennett had been meant for controlled environments, specific targets, embassy security, foreign intelligence under strict oversight. But if Marcus had been selling it to whoever would pay, how bad? He asked. I don't know yet, but bad enough that when this comes out, it's going to destroy Reed Technologies. The lawsuits alone will be catastrophic. And if any of those third parties are using the tech for illegal surveillance, corporate espionage, worse, Isabella's voice broke. I could be facing criminal charges for technology I didn't even know I was selling. They sat in silence. A bird sang somewhere in the garden, oblivious to the fact that both their lives were imploding. We go to the authorities, Daniel said finally. FBI, whoever handles corporate espionage and stolen classified tech. We tell them everything. And then we hope the truth matters more than the damage. Isabella laughed, but there was no humor in it. You really believe that? I have to, otherwise what's the point? She looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone angrier. Someone who'd want revenge, who'd enjoy watching me lose everything. Isabella's smile was sad. Someone who'd take Marcus's $400 million and walk away. Yeah, well, I have a 6-year-old daughter who thinks I'm a good person. I'd like to actually be one. The sound of tires on gravel made them both turn. Cole's black SUV pulled up, followed by two more vehicles Daniel didn't recognize. Cole got out, moving fast. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. Marcus Webb just withdrew $5 million in cash from 3 different accounts, and his passport was scanned at a private airfield 20 minutes ago. "He's running," Daniel said. "Not just running, erasing himself." Cole held up his phone, showing security footage. "This is from Reed Technologies headquarters, 15 minutes ago." He went into the server room with a laptop and a portable hard drive. "I'm betting he's wiping anything that connects him to the stolen tech." Isabella was already moving, pulling out her own phone. "Get me building security. Now." But Daniel was thinking 3 steps ahead, the way he'd learned to think when he was designing complex systems. Marcus wasn't just covering his tracks. He was burning everything down. "He's not erasing evidence," Daniel said slowly. "He's creating it. Evidence that implicates you, Isabella. That makes it look like you knew all along." Isabella stopped, phone halfway to her ear. "What?" "Think about it. He knows we're onto him, knows we're gathering proof. So he's going to flip the narrative, make himself the whistleblower, you the villain. He'll claim he discovered you were using stolen technology, tried to stop you, and you threatened him. That's why he's running, not because he's guilty, but because he's in danger. That's insane. No one would believe. They would if he has documentation supporting it. Emails, memos, records showing you giving him orders." Daniel stood, his mind racing. He's had years to build this, to plant evidence, to position himself as the loyal employee who got in over his head. Cole swore under his breath. If he gets on that plane, he's gone, untouchable, and everything collapses on Isabella. Isabella's face had gone pale, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Then we stop him from getting on the plane." "How?" "We don't have anything solid enough to get law enforcement involved. No proof that would hold him." "We don't need law enforcement," Isabella turned to Cole. "How fast can you get to that airfield?" 30 minutes if I push it." "Do it. Take Daniel with you. I'll coordinate from here. Get my legal team ready for whatever comes next." "You should come with us," Daniel said. "If Marcus is planning to frame you, then he's going to do it whether I'm hiding or not. Better I'm here, on record, making calls, acting like someone with nothing to hide." Isabella met his eyes. "Go. Stop him. Get proof of what he's done. I'll handle everything else." Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to tell her this was too dangerous, that Marcus was too smart and too ruthless. But looking at her face, at the steel beneath the fear, he knew she'd made up her mind. "Come on," Cole said. "We're wasting time." They ran for the SUV. Daniel barely had time to wave at Emma through the cottage window before Cole was gunning the engine, gravel spraying as they shot down the driveway. The drive to the airfield was a blur of 2 fast turns and red lights Cole ignored. Daniel spent it pulling up everything he could find about Marcus Webb on his laptop, cross-referencing with data Isabella was sending in real time. The picture that emerged was terrifying in its completeness. Marcus had been building his escape route for months, maybe years. Shell companies, offshore accounts, false identities. The man was a ghost who'd been pretending to be human. 2 minutes out, Cole said. Daniel looked up. They were on a narrow road leading to what looked like a private airport. Small hangars, a single runway, expensive jets parked in neat rows. He could see a plane at the far end, engines already running. "That's him," Cole said, pointing. A black sedan was parked near the plane. As they watched, a figure got out. Marcus, carrying a briefcase and moving with unhurried confidence toward the waiting aircraft. Cole floored it. The SUV shot forward, closing the distance in seconds. They came to a screeching halt between Marcus and the plane, both of them jumping out before the vehicle had fully stopped. Marcus turned, saw them, and smiled. "Danny," he called over the engine noise. "I was hoping you'd figure it out in time. Would have been disappointed otherwise." "You're not getting on that plane," Daniel said. "No? Who's going to stop me?" "You?" Marcus gestured at Cole. "Your hired muscle? I haven't broken any laws. Well, none you can prove. And I have a legal right to travel. Well, not with $5 million in stolen money. My money. Salary and bonuses, all properly documented. Isabella Reed signed every check herself." Marcus's smile widened. "You should ask her about that, actually. about how involved she was in the technology licensing deals, about how many meetings we had where I explained exactly where the surveillance tech came from. That's a lie. Is it? Because I have emails, recorded conversations, documentation showing Isabella knew from day one that the technology was stolen from Bennett Systems. Marcus pulled out his phone, held it up. In fact, I have a recording from 2 years ago where she explicitly tells me to keep you quiet if you ever came sniffing around. Want to hear it? Daniel's blood ran cold. You fabricated that. Prove it. Because it's time-stamped, backed up to 3 different servers, and corroborated by calendar invites and meeting notes. Marcus pocketed the phone. Here's what's going to happen, Danny. Marcus. I'm going to get on that plane. You're going to let me. Because if you don't, if you try to stop me or involve the authorities, I release everything. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence showing that Isabella Reed built her empire on stolen military technology. She'll be indicted within a week, in prison within a year. Bye to my shirts. And what about you? Me? I'm the whistleblower, the loyal employee who tried to do the right thing and got threatened for it. I'll cooperate fully with investigators, testify against Isabella, and walk away with immunity and probably a book deal. Marcus started backing toward the plane. Or you let me leave and I delete everything. Isabella's name stays clean. Reed Technologies survives. You get to keep playing hero without destroying an innocent woman's life. Daniel's hands were shaking. Everything Marcus was saying had the ring of careful planning, of contingencies built on contingencies. Even if half of it was lies, the other half would be enough to bury Isabella. Don't do this, Daniel said. Whatever you think you've built, it's not worth it. You're right. It's worth more. Marcus reached the plane stairs. You had a choice at the hotel, Danny. You made the wrong one. Now you get to live with it. He started climbing. Daniel took a step forward, and Cole's hand landed on his shoulder. Let him go, Cole said quietly. He's right. If we escalate this now, Isabella gets destroyed in the fallout. Daniel watched Marcus disappear into the plane, every instinct screaming at him to do something, anything. But Cole was right. Marcus had won, had planned for every possibility, built escape routes on escape routes. The plane's door closed. The engine spooled up. Within minutes, it was taxiing toward the runway. Damn it, Daniel said. His phone was ringing. Isabella. Did you stop him? She asked. No. Isabella, he has recordings, documents. He claims you knew about the stolen technology all along. The silence on the other end stretched so long that Daniel thought the call had dropped. Isabella? I believe him, she said quietly. Not about me knowing, but about having the evidence. Marcus is too careful not to have insurance. So what do? We find proof he fabricated it. We get ahead of the story. She stopped. Actually, I need to make some calls. Come back to the house. We'll figure this out. She hung up. Daniel stood watching the plane lift off, feeling like he'd just lost a fight he hadn't known he was in. The drive back was silent. Cole didn't offer platitudes, didn't try to spin it as anything other than what it was. They'd failed. Marcus was gone. And whatever came next was going to be bad. When they pulled up to Isabella's house, Emma came running out of the guest cottage, her face bright with excitement. Daddy! Isabella showed me the pool, and there's a robot that cleans it, and she says, maybe I can go swimming tomorrow if it's okay with you. Daniel caught her up in a hug, buried his face in her hair, and tried not to think about how he'd just gambled with her future and lost. Isabella appeared in the doorway behind Emma, phone in hand, her expression grim. She waited until Emma ran back inside, then walked over. My legal team says Marcus's recordings would be devastating even if we prove they're fake, she said without preamble. The court of public opinion doesn't wait for verification. By the time we clear my name, Reed Technologies will be finished. There has to be something we can do. There is. I can get ahead of it. Release a statement acknowledging that Marcus Webb brought concerns about the surveillance technology to my attention, that I'm cooperating with authorities, that Reed Technologies takes full responsibility. Isabella's voice was hollow. I fall on the sword before Marcus can push me onto it. That's not justice. Yeah, no. But it might save the company, might save the jobs of 3,000 employees who had nothing to do with this. She looked at him. Your surveillance technology, the original Bennett Systems design. Do you still have the files? Maybe. On an old hard drive somewhere. Why? Because if we can prove the original design was yours, if we can show a clear chain from Bennett to Marcus to Reed Technologies without my involvement, it might be enough to shift the narrative.
Oh. Isabella's eyes were fierce. I'm not going down for something I didn't do, and I'm not letting Marcus walk away clean.
Daniel's mind was already spinning. His old files from Bennett. There had been backups, hadn't there? External drives he'd shoved in a box when he'd packed up his home office 6 years ago. Documentation, design specs, emails with timestamps that predated Marcus's theft. I need to go home, he said. Dig through storage. It might take a while. Take Emma with you. Keep her safe. I'll stay here with Cole's team. Start coordinating with my lawyers. Isabella touched his arm briefly. Thank you for not taking Marcus's money. For trying to stop him, for... She stopped. Just thank you. Daniel nodded, not trusting his voice. He went to get Emma, who was disappointed about leaving but accepted it with the resilience of kids who'd learned early that plans changed without warning. The drive home should have been a chance to decompress, to think, to plan. But Emma was full of questions about Isabella's house, about the job, about when they could go back. Daniel answered on autopilot, his mind stuck on Marcus's smile as he'd boarded that plane. They got home just as the sun was setting. Daniel made Emma dinner, grilled cheese, because that's all he could focus on, and then sent her upstairs to get ready for bed while he went to the garage. His storage boxes were in the back corner, stacked haphazardly and covered in dust. 6 years of accumulated debris from a life he'd tried to forget. Daniel started pulling them down, opening them one by one. Old textbooks, Emma's baby clothes, papers from the divorce, a coffee maker that had never worked right, box after box of junk he should have thrown away years ago. And then, at the bottom of the stack, he found it, a cardboard box marked Bennett Archives in his own handwriting. Inside were external hard drives, file folders, CDs with dates scrawled on them in marker. Daniel carried the whole thing inside, his hands trembling slightly. His old laptop was in the closet, ancient and probably dead. But when he plugged it in, it whirred to life, the boot screen glowing in the dim light of his kitchen. It took 30 minutes to get the external drives connected and recognized, another 30 to find the right files. But they were there, all of them. Design specifications for the surveillance system, development logs, emails between Daniel and the government contract officer, timestamps proving he'd been working on this technology a full year before Marcus had ever seen it. Daniel called Isabella. It was past 9, but she answered immediately. I found it, he said. All of it. The original files, the documentation, everything we need to prove the technology was mine. Send it to me. Now. My lawyers are standing by. Daniel started the file transfer, watching the progress bar creep across the screen. While it uploaded, he pulled up some of the old emails, reading through conversations he barely remembered having. And that's when he saw it. An email thread from 7 years ago, before Bennett had even landed the government contract. Daniel and Marcus, brainstorming about surveillance technology. But it wasn't the conversation that caught his eye. It was the metadata, the routing information buried in the email header. The messages hadn't come from Marcus's Bennett Systems email address. They'd come from somewhere else. A server Daniel didn't recognize, routed through proxies that shouldn't have existed in a normal business email. Marcus had been planning this 7 years ago. Maybe longer. Daniel dug deeper, pulling up more emails, checking more headers. The pattern was consistent. Marcus's communications had always been routed strangely, always had digital fingerprints that didn't quite match what they should be. His phone rang. Isabella again. Daniel, you need to see this. I'm sending you a link. The link led to a news article posted 20 minutes ago. The headline made Daniel's stomach drop. Reed Technologies CEO under investigation for technology theft and corporate espionage. The article cited anonymous sources claiming Isabella Reed had knowingly built her company on stolen military technology. It included quotes from former employees, clearly fake, but convincing, and references to ongoing federal investigations that Daniel was pretty sure didn't exist yet.
Marcus, Daniel said.
He didn't wait. He's already destroying me. Isabella's voice was tight. My phone hasn't stopped ringing. Board members, investors, journalists, She stopped. In the background, Daniel heard shouting. Isabella? What's happening? There are protesters outside my gate.
Someone must have leaked my address because there are dozens of them, and more shouting. Closer now. Cole's moving me to a secure location. I have to go.
Wait.
The line went dead.
Daniel stood in his kitchen, laptop still uploading files, and felt the situation spiral completely out of his control. Emma was upstairs. Marcus was in the wind. Isabella was under siege, and somehow Daniel's surveillance technology, the work he'd been most proud of, had become the weapon destroying all of them. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Still time to take the deal, Danny. $400 million. All this goes away. Think about Emma. What? Daniel stared at the message. $400 million. Enough to protect his daughter from whatever came next. Enough to walk away clean. He deleted the text and kept uploading the files.
Somewhere across the city, Marcus was probably watching, waiting to see what Daniel would do. Whether he'd break, whether the pressure would be enough to make him compromise. But Daniel had spent 6 years learning how to survive with nothing, had raised a daughter on a repair tech's salary, had built a life from the ruins Marcus had left him. He wasn't going to break now. The file upload completed. Daniel sent Isabella a message. Files are uploaded. I found something else. Marcus has been planning this for at least 7 years. This isn't opportunistic. It's premeditated. We can prove it. No response. Daniel tried calling, straight to voicemail. He was about to try again when Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing her eyes.
Daddy, you're being loud.
Sorry, Bug, just working. Go back to bed. Is everything okay? You seem worried.
Daniel looked at his daughter, 6 years old and already too perceptive for her own good. He could lie, could tell her everything was fine, but he'd promised himself he'd never lie to her.
I'm dealing with some grown-up stuff, he said carefully. It's complicated, but I'm handling it. Is it about the lady with the big house? Yeah, it's about her. Emma patted over, climbed into his lap despite being too big for it, and rested her head against his chest.
Daniel wrapped his arms around her and felt something in his chest crack.
I think she's sad, Emma said quietly. Why do you say that?
When we were reading, I asked her if she had kids, and she got this look, like she wanted to say yes, but couldn't. It made me sad, too. What'd she ate? Bullshit. Daniel thought about Isabella, brilliant, successful, powerful Isabella Reed, sitting in her enormous empty house, reading to someone else's daughter because she didn't have her own. Yeah, he said softly. I think she probably is. They sat like that for a while, Emma's breathing evening out as she started to drift off. Daniel's laptop kept humming, processing files, searching for patterns. Outside, the night was quiet, and somewhere out there, Marcus Webb was probably sleeping peacefully, confident he'd won. But Daniel was learning something about himself, something he'd forgotten in 6 years of keeping his head down and surviving. He didn't give up, didn't quit. And when someone came after the people he cared about, whether that was his daughter or a woman he'd met less than 2 days ago, he fought back. Marcus had made one critical mistake. He'd assumed Daniel was still the same desperate man from 6 years ago. Someone who could be bought or threatened or broken. He'd assumed wrong. Daniel carried Emma upstairs and tucked her into bed, then came back down to find 3 new missed calls from Isabella. He was dialing her back when his laptop screen flickered and went dark. Not off. Dark. Like someone had cut the power remotely. He stared at it for 3 seconds before his brain caught up. Then he was moving, yanking the power cord from the wall, disconnecting the external drives. His hands working on muscle memory while his mind raced. The laptop came back on. A message filled the screen in white text on black. You uploaded the wrong files, Danny. Try again. Daniel's blood turned to ice. Mom, Daniel's blood. He hadn't uploaded the wrong files. He'd uploaded exactly what Isabella needed, which meant someone had intercepted them, replaced them, made sure that whatever Isabella's lawyers were looking at right now wasn't evidence against Marcus. It was evidence against Daniel. His phone rang, not Isabella this time. A number he didn't recognize. Hello? You're predictable, Danny.
That's always been your problem. Marcus's voice was calm, almost friendly. I knew you'd have backups from Bennett, knew you'd dig them up, knew you'd send them to Isabella thinking you were helping. What did you do? And modified the timestamps, changed a few key details in the design specs, added some emails that show you and I working together from the beginning. Marcus paused. Your evidence now proves we were partners, that you sold me the technology willingly, that you've been lying to Isabella this whole time to cover your own involvement. Daniel's grip on the phone was tight enough to hurt. She'll know it's fake. Is your boy? Will she? She's under investigation now. The FBI is involved. Real FBI this time, not just threats. They're going to want to talk to her about stolen military technology. And when they do, when they look at the evidence she has, they're going to see your files showing you and me as partners. Marcus's voice hardened. You're not the hero here, Danny. You're the accomplice. And Isabella Reed is going to realize she trusted the wrong person. The line went dead. Daniel stood frozen in his kitchen, the enormity of it crashing over him. Marcus hadn't just stolen his technology and framed Isabella. He'd set Daniel up to be the final nail in her coffin, the smoking gun that would destroy whatever credibility she had left. He tried calling Isabella again, voicemail. He tried Cole. Same thing. Either they were deliberately not answering or something had happened. Daniel grabbed his keys, was halfway to the door when he stopped. Emma was asleep upstairs. He couldn't just leave her, couldn't drag her into whatever was about to happen. But he couldn't abandon Isabella either. He called Mrs. Patterson. She answered on the fourth ring, voice thick with sleep. Daniel? It's almost 11. I need a favor. A big one. Can you come stay with Emma right now? Something in his tone must have gotten through because she didn't ask questions. Give me 5 minutes. It took 8. Daniel spent them gathering the original external drives, copying files to a fresh laptop he kept for emergencies, and trying to figure out what the hell he was going to do. Marcus had anticipated everything, had plans within plans. How do you fight someone who's always 3 steps ahead? Mrs. Patterson arrived in her bathrobe, took one look at Daniel's face, and squeezed his arm. Whatever it is, be careful, she said. Daniel kissed Emma's forehead before he left, whispered that he loved her even though she was asleep and couldn't hear him. Then he was in his truck, driving too fast through empty streets, trying Isabella's number over and over. She finally answered as he was pulling onto the highway. Daniel, where are you? Coming to you, where are you? Safe house downtown. Cole's team moved me an hour ago. Her voice was strained. The FBI showed up at my actual house. They have a warrant. They're seizing everything. Computers, files, all of it. The files I sent you. My lawyers are looking at them now. Daniel, there's a problem. The timestamps don't match what you said. Some of these emails show you and Marcus collaborating from... They're fake. Marcus intercepted the upload and modified them. I have the originals, the real ones, but I need to get them to you in person. Where's the safe house? Isabella gave him an address. Daniel plugged it into his GPS and pushed the truck faster. The city slid past in blurs of streetlights and empty intersections. How bad is it? He asked. Bad. The news story triggered an SEC investigation. My board is meeting tomorrow to discuss my removal. Half my executive team has already resigned. Isabella's laugh was brittle. And the FBI agent who showed up tonight seemed very interested in why I'd been working with someone who designed classified surveillance systems for the government. What did you tell them? The truth. That I didn't know. That Marcus brought me the technology and I trusted him. A pause. They didn't believe me. Daniel's hands tightened on the wheel. I'm going to fix this. How? Marcus has thought of everything. Every move we make, he's already 10 steps ahead. Her voice cracked. I don't know how to fight this. We prove he's been planning it for years. We show the FBI that he's not Marcus Webb at all. We dig up enough dirt that his whole story falls apart. And if we can't, Daniel didn't have an answer for that. The GPS showed 12 minutes to the safe house. 12 minutes to figure out how to salvage this disaster. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Just a photo this time. It took Daniel's brain a second to process what he was seeing. Emma's room,
taken from the window. Recent enough that he could see the light from the hallway where he'd left the door cracked. Someone had been at his house, outside his daughter's window, taking pictures. The next text came through before Daniel could react. Last chance, Danny. Take the deal, or Emma learns what it's like to grow up without a father. Some men in our line of work end up in prison. Some end up dead. Which one are you going to be? Daniel's vision tunneled. He barely saw the road anymore, barely felt his hands on the wheel. Someone had been at his house, had photographed his daughter while she slept, while Mrs. Patterson sat downstairs, oblivious. He dialed Marcus's number with shaking hands. I wondered how long it would take, Marcus said by way of greeting. You go near my daughter again, and I will kill you. No, you won't. You're not built that way, Danny. You're the guy who follows the rules, who does the right thing, who sacrifices himself for other people. Marcus's voice was almost gentle. That's why you're going to take the deal. Because you know I'm serious. And you know I always finish what I start. The FBI is involved now. You can't just... Can't what? The FBI doesn't know I exist. As far as they're concerned, I'm a loyal employee who discovered his boss was dealing in stolen military tech. They're not looking for me, Danny. They're looking for you and Isabella. Marcus paused. Last chance, $400 million. Clean break. Emma grows up safe and you get to be her father, or you keep playing hero and she visits you in prison until she's old enough to understand what you really are. What I really am? A man who stole classified government technology and sold it for profit. A man who got caught and tried to blame his former partner. A man who lied to everyone, including his own daughter. Marcus's voice was cold now. That's what the evidence shows. That's what the FBI will prove. That's what Emma will believe when she's old enough to Google your name. Daniel's throat was so tight he could barely breathe. Everything Marcus was saying had the terrible weight of truth behind it. Not actual truth, but the kind that looked real enough to destroy a life. 24 hours, Marcus said. Think about it. Think about Emma. Then make the right choice. He hung up. Daniel drove on autopilot, his mind a white noise of rage and terror. Someone had been at his house, had taken pictures of Emma through her window. The threat was real. Marcus didn't bluff. The safe house turned out to be a high-rise apartment building downtown, all concrete and security cameras. Daniel parked in the garage and took the elevator to the 14th floor, where Cole met him at the door with a weapon Daniel pretended not to notice. She's in bad shape, Cole said quietly. Fair warning. Isabella was sitting on the couch with her phone in her hands, staring at the screen like it might bite her. She looked up when Daniel came in, and he saw the exhaustion carved into her face. She'd changed clothes, but her hair was a mess, and there were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. Yesterday. Had it really only been a day and a half since she'd shown up on his porch in the rain? Did Marcus call you? She asked. Yeah, threatened my daughter. Sent me photos of her bedroom window. Isabella's face went pale. We need to call the police. And tell them what? That someone took pictures from outside my house? They'll file a report and do nothing. Marcus knows that. Daniel sat down across from her. He's giving me 24 hours to take his deal. $400 million to sign a contract saying we were partners all along. You can't. I know. Daniel. Isabella leaned forward. If this is about protecting me, about some misguided sense of, it's not about you. It's about the fact that if I sign that contract, Marcus wins. He gets away with everything, and 6 years from now, he'll do this to someone else. Daniel pulled out his laptop. I have the real files. The originals, unmodified. We just need to find someone who'll actually look at them. My lawyers are going to be too afraid of the FBI to touch them. We need someone else. Someone with the technical expertise to prove the timestamps are accurate. Someone the FBI will actually listen to. Isabella was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. Sarah, it's Isabella Reed. I know it's late, but I need a favor. A big one. She paused, listening. I need you to look at some files, computer forensics, timestamp verification, the works. Can you be here in an hour? What? She hung up and looked at Daniel. Sarah Chen, digital forensics specialist. She's testified in federal court a dozen times. If anyone can prove your files are authentic, it's her. Chen, Daniel said slowly. Any relation to Marcus Chen, your old CFO? His daughter. But she and her father don't exactly get along. He pushed her toward business. She went into computer science out of spite. Isabella's smile was thin. If there's anyone who'd enjoy proving Marcus wrong, it's Sarah. They spent the next hour going through Daniel's files, organizing them, building a timeline of the surveillance technology's development. The more they dug, the clearer the pattern became. Daniel had started the project 8 years ago. Marcus had joined Bennett Systems 7 years ago. The government contract had come through 6 years ago. And Reed Technologies had acquired Bennett 5.5 years ago. He targeted you deliberately, Daniel said, looking at acquisition records. Reed Technologies was one of 3 companies bidding on Bennett, but you were the only one who'd just lost a husband, the only one who'd be desperate enough to move fast, to not ask too many questions. Isabella's face was unreadable. My husband died 6 years ago. Marcus approached me about the acquisition 3 months later. While you were grieving, while you were trying to prove you could run the company alone. He said the surveillance technology would revolutionize the industry, that it would be my legacy, not just my husband's company. Isabella's hands curled into fists. I was so desperate to prove myself that I didn't see it, didn't question where the tech came from or why Marcus was so eager to join my company specifically. He played us both, long game, years of setup. Why go to all this trouble? Why not just sell the technology himself? Daniel had been wondering the same thing, but looking at the patterns, at the way Marcus had positioned himself, an answer was starting to form. Because selling stolen military tech is traceable, dangerous, but licensing it through a legitimate company, through someone like you who has government contracts and security clearances, that's safe, that's smart. Daniel pulled up financial records Isabella had sent earlier. And if things go wrong, if anyone starts asking questions, he has a scapegoat, you. I've been his cover story from the beginning. Yeah, and I was his proof of concept. If he could steal from me, destroy my career, and get away with it, he knew he could do it on a bigger scale. The buzzer rang. Cole checked the camera, then let in a woman in her early 30s with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that immediately reminded Daniel of her father. Sarah Chen carried a laptop bag and had the look of someone who'd been woken up and wasn't happy about it. This better be good, she said. Then she saw Isabella's face and her expression softened. That bad? Worse. Isabella made introductions quickly. We need you to prove these files are authentic, that the timestamps haven't been modified and the content matches original documentation from 8 years ago. Sarah took Daniel's laptop without ceremony and started working. She didn't ask for context, didn't waste time with questions, just pulled up programs Daniel didn't recognize and started analyzing the files with the focused intensity of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. 20 minutes passed in silence. Daniel paced. Isabella sat very still, her phone dark in her hands. Cole stood by the window, watching the street below. Finally, Sarah looked up. These files have been accessed recently, but the creation dates are authentic. 8 years old, give or take a month. The metadata matches. The file structure is consistent with systems from that era, and the encryption protocols are outdated in ways that would be almost impossible to fake convincingly. Almost? Daniel said. Nothing's impossible. But this would require resources and expertise beyond what most people have access to. Sarah pulled up another screen. You said someone sent Isabella modified versions of these same files? Yeah, made it look like Marcus and I were partners from the beginning. Show me. Isabella pulled up the files her lawyers had been reviewing. Sarah compared them side by side with Daniel's originals, her eyes moving fast across the screens. Sloppy, she said finally. Whoever modified these knew what they were doing technically, but they made mistakes. The timestamps are too perfect. Real files accumulate small errors over time. System clock drift, time zone changes, daylight savings adjustments. These modified files don't have any of that. They're clean in a way real archived files never are. Can you prove it? Isabella asked. I can write a report that would hold up in court. But Isabella, Sarah looked at her seriously. If the FBI already has the modified files, if they're building a case based on them, my report might not be enough. You need more than just proof that one set of files is real. You need proof of who modified them and why. We know who. Marcus Webb.
Each bullshit. Can you prove it was him specifically? Can you trace the modifications back to his systems, his accounts, his physical location when the changes were made? The room went silent. Because the answer was no. They couldn't prove it was Marcus. He was too careful, too smart. He'd have used proxies, false identities, systems that couldn't be traced. Daniel's phone rang. Unknown number again. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Hayes? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. This is Special Agent Victoria Moss with the FBI. I need you to come in for questioning regarding the theft and distribution of classified surveillance technology. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Federal Building downtown. Daniel's stomach dropped. I haven't done anything. We have evidence suggesting otherwise. If you fail to appear, a warrant will be issued for your arrest. A pause. Bring a lawyer, Mr. Hayes. You're going to need one. Yim. She hung up. Daniel looked at Isabella. They want me to come in tomorrow for questioning. They called me too. Same time. Isabella's face was gray. It's happening. Marcus's frame-up. They're going to arrest us. Not if we give them Marcus first, Daniel said. We have 24 hours. We use it. To do what? Sarah just said we can't prove Marcus modified the files. Then we prove something else. We prove he's not who he says he is. We prove he's been running cons for years. We find his real identity, his real history, and we hand that to the FBI along with Sarah's analysis and everything else we have. Daniel was already pulling up searches on his laptop. Marcus doesn't operate in a vacuum. He has to have left traces somewhere. I've been looking into him for 2 days, Isabella said. There's nothing. His employment history checks out. His references are solid. His background is clean. Too clean. That's the tell. Daniel turned to Sarah. Can you run a deep background check? Not just public records, financial transactions, digital footprints, anything that might show inconsistencies? Sarah was already typing. Give me his full name and social security number. Isabella pulled up Marcus's employment file and read off the information. Sarah entered it into systems Daniel didn't have access to, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Interesting, she said after a minute. His social was issued 6 years ago. Not 6 years ago when he was born. 6 years ago, period. Before that, this number didn't exist. Stolen identity, Cole asked. Or purchased. There's a whole black market for this stuff. Clean socials, established credit histories, complete background packages. Sarah dug deeper. His credit history only goes back 5 years. Before that, nothing. No loans, no credit cards, no financial footprint at all. So he bought the identity 6 years ago and built a life around it, Daniel said. What about before that? Can you trace who he was before he became Marcus Webb? Maybe, if he used any of the same devices, same accounts, same digital patterns. Sarah pulled up another program. This is going to take time. Hours, maybe more. We don't have hours, Isabella said. The FBI wants us tomorrow morning. Daniel looked at the clock. Almost midnight. 9 hours until they had to walk into the Federal Building and face whatever Marcus had built for them. His phone buzzed. Another text from Marcus. Clock's ticking, Danny. Smart money says you take the deal. Emma deserves better than visiting hours. Daniel stared at the message, at the threat wrapped in concern. Then he made a decision. I'm going to find Marcus, he said. Everyone looked at him. What? Isabella said. He's in the city. Has to be. He wouldn't run this operation remotely, wouldn't trust it to unfold without him watching. He's somewhere close, monitoring everything, waiting to see if I break. Daniel grabbed his jacket. I'm going to find him, and I'm going to make him tell me who he really is. That's insane, Isabella said. You don't even know where to start looking. Yes, I do. Daniel pulled up the email header information he'd found earlier, the routing data that had seemed strange. These proxy servers he used 7 years ago, some of them are local, physical locations in the city. He had to access them from somewhere. If I can trace the access points, I might be able to narrow down where he operates from. That's a long shot. It's the only shot we have. Daniel looked at Isabella.
You and Sarah keep working on his identity. Find anything you can. I'll find Marcus and get him to confess. He's not just going to confess. He will if I give him what he wants. If I make him think I'm going to sign the contract. Daniel's hands were steady now, his mind clear with purpose. He wants to gloat. Wants me to know how thoroughly he's beaten me. I'll let him. And while he's talking, I'll be recording everything. Cole stepped forward. I'm going with you. No, you stay here. Protect Isabella. This is something I need to do alone. Daniel, Isabella stood. This is too dangerous. If Marcus is willing to threaten Emma, what do you think he'll do if you corner him? I don't know, but I'm done being afraid of him. Daniel headed for the door. I'll call you in 3 hours. If you don't hear from me by then, assume it went wrong and do whatever you have to do to protect yourself. Wait, but Daniel was already gone. Door closing behind him, elevator descending toward the garage, and the night, and whatever came next. He drove through empty streets, laptop open on the passenger seat, following digital breadcrumbs that might lead nowhere. The proxy servers Marcus had used were scattered across the city, some in office buildings, some in residential areas, some in places that didn't make immediate sense. But there was one location that appeared in the logs more than any other. A building in the financial district, old enough to have been there 7 years ago, new enough to have the kind of infrastructure Marcus would need. Daniel parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot. The building was dark except for scattered lights in windows where night shifts worked, or insomniacs couldn't sleep. He found a service entrance with a lock he managed to bypass with tools from his truck. 6 years fixing broken systems had taught him a few things about getting into places he shouldn't be. The elevator was out of service after hours, so he took the stairs. 14 floors, his legs burning by the time he reached the top. The hallway was empty, fluorescent lights humming overhead. And at the end of the hall, light showed under one door. Daniel approached quietly, pressed his ear to the door. Heard the faint sound of typing, someone working late, or someone who'd never left. He tried the handle. Unlocked. The door swung open to reveal a small office with city views and expensive furniture, and Marcus Webb sitting at a desk with 3 monitors glowing in front of him. Marcus looked up, smiled. Hello? Danny, he said. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Daniel stepped inside and closed the door behind him. We need to talk. About the deal? Finally seeing sense? About who you really are. Because I know you're not Marcus Webb. Know the identity is fake. Know you've been running this con for years. Daniel's hand was in his pocket, phone recording everything. So tell me, who are you really? And what do you actually want? Marcus leaned back in his chair, that infuriating smile still in place. And for the first time since this whole thing started, Daniel saw something flicker in his eyes. Not fear, not quite, but something close to it. Recognition that he'd finally been caught. Marcus's smile didn't fade, but something shifted behind his eyes. He gestured to a chair across from his desk like they were old colleagues meeting for coffee. You want the truth? Fine. Sit down. Danny, let me tell you a story about how the world actually works. Daniel didn't sit. Start with your real name. Names are just tools. Identities are currency. Marcus swiveled his chair slightly, fingers steepled. But if you need something to call me, try Michael Durant. That was the name I used before Marcus Webb. And before that, Martin Chen. Notice the pattern? You keep stealing from the Chen family. I keep using what's available. Marcus Chen's daughter Sarah is brilliant but sloppy with her digital security. Made it easy to borrow her father's identity for credibility. Marcus, or Michael, or whoever he really was, pulled up something on one of his monitors. You want to know who I am? I'm the person who figured out that in a world obsessed with credentials and background checks, the easiest way to win is to simply purchase better credentials than everyone else. That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters. My birth name, my actual history. That person died a long time ago. Went bankrupt, lost everything, realized the system was rigged. Marcus's voice was calm, almost professorial. So I learned to rig it back. Built new identities, new histories, positioned myself to take from people who had what I needed. Like me, like you, like Isabella, like a dozen other people whose work I've acquired over the years. Marcus leaned forward. You think you're special, Danny. You're not. You're just another talented person who was too ethical to see the opportunity in front of you. Daniel's hand tightened around the phone in his pocket, making sure it was still recording. The surveillance technology. The government contract. You planned all of it. I identified an opportunity. Bennett Systems had something valuable. You were too idealistic to monetize it properly. I positioned myself, gained your trust, and when Reed Technologies came sniffing around, I made sure they found exactly what I wanted them to find. Marcus shrugged. It's not personal. It's just efficient. You destroyed my career, not my life. I created an opportunity for myself. What happened to you was collateral damage. Marcus's eyes were flat, emotionless. And if you'd been smarter, you would have done the same thing. That's what I could never understand about you, Danny. You had the skills, had the intelligence, but you wasted it on principles and ethics and caring about people who would never care about you.
Is that what you tell yourself? That everyone's as empty as you are?
I tell myself the truth, that the world is run by people who take what they want, and everyone else just lives in the wake of those decisions. Marcus pulled up another screen. You want proof? Look at this. Every company I've worked for, every identity I've built, every person I've taken from, they all recovered. Bennett Systems got acquired. The employees found new job. You raised your daughter, built a life. Isabella's company will survive this. The system absorbs the damage and keeps running. Except the people you hurt don't get reset. We live with what you did. And you're still alive, still functional, which means the damage wasn't that bad. Marcus closed the screen. Here's what I've learned, Danny. Success isn't about being good or right or ethical. It's about being willing to do what others won't. I'm willing to lie, steal, manipulate, destroy, whatever it takes. And that's why I win. Daniel felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger anymore. Something clearer. You really believe that? I know that. I've proven it over and over. Marcus gestured at his monitors. Right now, the FBI has evidence that will destroy you and Isabella. By tomorrow afternoon, you'll both be under arrest. Reed Technologies will collapse. And I'll disappear into another identity, another opportunity, another win. Unless I take your deal. Unless you take the deal. 400 million, Danny. More money than you could spend in 3 lifetimes. Emma's future secured. Your name cleared. All you have to do is admit we were partners and sign a piece of paper. Daniel looked at Marcus, at Michael Durant or Martin Chen or whatever his real name was, and saw someone who'd amputated every human part of themselves in pursuit of an empty definition of winning. Someone who'd traded connection for control, meaning for money, everything real for the illusion of power. No, Daniel said. Marcus's smile finally faded. You're making a mistake, Sat. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Daniel pulled out his phone, stopped the recording. I came here thinking I needed your confession. Needed you to admit what you'd done so I could prove it to the FBI. But I was wrong. Spasis. About what? About what matters. You can have your money and your fake identities and your empty victories. I'm done fighting you on your terms. Daniel turned toward the door. I'm going to that FBI meeting tomorrow. I'm going to tell them the truth, all of it. And whatever happens after that, at least Emma will know I didn't compromise who I am for money. They'll arrest you, prosecute you, send you to prison. Maybe. Or maybe they'll see through your lies. Maybe the truth will actually matter. Daniel opened the door. Either way, I'm choosing to believe it's worth trying. You're a fool, Danny. Yeah, probably. Daniel looked back. But I'd rather be a fool with a daughter who respects me than a winner who's destroyed everyone around him and calls it success. He walked out, leaving Marcus alone in his expensive office with his stolen victories and his hollow existence. The recording on his phone wouldn't be enough to convict anyone. Marcus had been too careful with his words. But it would be enough to show the FBI who they were really dealing with. Daniel called Isabella from the stairwell. I found him, he said. Got him talking. He admitted to using fake identities, to stealing from multiple companies. It's not a full confession, but it's something. Daniel, where are you? We found... Isabella's voice was excited, urgent.
Sarah found his real identity, his actual history. You need to get back here now. 20 minutes later, Daniel was back at the safe house. Everyone crowded around Sarah's laptop. She'd pulled up records that made Daniel's head spin. His real name is Nathan Cross, Sarah said. Born in Ohio, 46 years old, he worked in corporate espionage for 15 years before going independent. Has at least 7 documented identities that I can find, probably more. And here's the important part. He's wanted in 3 countries for fraud, theft, and industrial espionage. The FBI doesn't know? Daniel asked. They do now. I sent everything to Special Agent Moss an hour ago. Sarah pulled up an email confirmation. She called me back 10 minutes later. They're issuing a warrant for his arrest. Isabella was staring at the screen. He's been wanted for years and nobody caught him. He's good at disappearing, good at becoming someone else. Sarah highlighted a section of records. But he made one mistake. When he bought the Marcus Webb identity 6 years ago, he used a financial system that keeps encrypted backups. I was able to trace the transaction back to an account in his real name. So the FBI has proof he's a fraud, Daniel said slowly. So the FBI. But do they have proof he stole my technology? That he framed us? Dig it? Buy this son. Sarah's expression fell slightly. That's harder to prove. The evidence against you and Isabella is still damaging. Even with Nathan Cross's real identity exposed, his fabricated files show you as willing participants. Then we give them something they can't ignore. Isabella pulled out her phone. I'm calling in every favor I have, getting senators involved, technology experts, anyone who can verify that the surveillance system was Daniel's original work. We bury them in proof until they have no choice but to see the truth. That could take weeks, Cole said. You have 9 hours. Then we work fast. Isabella was already dialing. Sarah, I need you to write the most detailed forensic report of your career. Daniel, pull together every scrap of documentation about the original Bennett Systems project. Cole, get me legal counsel who specializes in federal defense. Everyone moves now. The next 8 hours were a blur. Daniel worked with Sarah to document every phase of the surveillance technology's development, building a timeline so detailed that no one could question who'd actually designed it. Isabella made dozens of calls, bringing in experts and allies and people who owed her favors. Cole coordinated with lawyers who arrived looking exhausted but determined. By 7 a.m., they had a case. Not perfect, but solid. Proof that Daniel had developed the technology years before Marcus, Nathan, had stolen it. Expert testimony. Sarah's forensic analysis. And the recording of Nathan admitting to using multiple fake identities. At 8:30, Daniel called Mrs. Patterson to check on Emma. She's fine, sweetheart. Had pancakes for breakfast? Asking when you're coming home. Mrs. Patterson's voice lowered. Everything okay? You sounded scared last night. Ma. It's complicated, but I think it's going to be okay. Daniel hoped he wasn't lying. Tell Emma I love her. I'll be home this afternoon. You better be. At 8:45, Daniel and Isabella walked into the federal building downtown, surrounded by lawyers and carrying enough documentation to fill 3 briefcases. Special Agent Moss met them in a conference room that smelled like old coffee and fluorescent lights. She was younger than Daniel expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and an expression that gave nothing away. 2 other agents flanked her, along with a prosecutor who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Hayes, Miss Reed. Agent Moss gestured to chairs. Thank you for coming in voluntarily. We're here to tell you the truth, Isabella said, about Marcus Webb, about the surveillance technology, about everything. We have some questions about that. Agent Moss pulled up a file. Starting with your relationship with Nathan Cross. Daniel blinked. You know his real name. We've known Nathan Cross was operating in the area for 6 months. We just couldn't pin down which identity he was currently using. Agent Moss smiled thinly. Your forensics expert's email last night gave us the final piece. We arrested him 3 hours ago at that office building downtown. After this was 12 hours. The room went silent. Daniel felt something unlock in his chest. You arrested him, he repeated, along with evidence from his computer showing fabricated documents, stolen identities, and a very detailed plan to frame both of you for his crimes.
Agent Moss pulled up photos. Nathan in handcuffs, looking furious and small. We've been building a case against him for months.
You just helped us close it. So we're not under investigation? Isabella asked carefully.
You are, but for being victims of corporate espionage, not perpetrators. Agent Moss leaned back. Nathan Cross is going to prison for a very long time.
The question now is, what happens to Reed Technologies and the surveillance technology that's already been distributed?
What followed was 3 hours of detailed questioning, explanations, documentation review. Daniel walked them through the original Bennett Systems project, the government contract, Nathan's infiltration. Isabella explained how she'd been deceived, how she'd unknowingly built her company on stolen work. By noon, Agent Moss called a break. She pulled Daniel and Isabella aside. Here's the situation. Nathan Cross is facing multiple federal charges. The evidence against him is overwhelming. But the technology he stole and distributed, that's a problem. It's out there now, being used by companies and governments we can't easily reach.
What are you saying? Isabella asked.
I'm saying Reed Technologies is going to face scrutiny, lawsuits, possibly criminal charges for distributing classified technology, even unknowingly. Agent Moss's expression softened slightly.
But if you cooperate fully, if you help us trace every instance of the technology and work to disable it, the government might be willing to show leniency. What does that mean for my company? It means you survive, probably, with heavy oversight and significant penalties. But you survive.
Isabella was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll cooperate, completely. Whatever you need. Agent Moss turned to Daniel. And you, Mr. Hayes.
The original surveillance system was your design. The government is going to want to discuss compensation for the unauthorized use of your work,
and possibly employment, if you're interested in helping us understand and control the technology.
Daniel thought about Emma, about the life he'd built, about 6 years of fixing broken appliances and telling himself it was enough.
I'm interested, he said, but I need flexibility. I have a daughter. She comes first. We can work with that.
They finished the interview by 2 p.m.
Daniel and Isabella walked out of the federal building into afternoon sunshine that felt surreal after the fluorescent-lit interrogation. Reporters were gathered outside. Someone had leaked the story, but Cole and his team created a corridor through the crowd. No comment, Isabella said to every shouted question. Official statement coming tomorrow.
They made it to the SUV.
Cole drove them back to Isabella's house, where Daniel had left his truck what felt like a lifetime ago. The gate was still open. The house looked the same as it had yesterday, untouched by the chaos that had consumed their lives. What happens now? Daniel asked. Isabella looked at her house, the glass and steel monument to success that had been built on lies she hadn't known about. I rebuild, properly this time, with transparency and oversight and people I actually trust. She turned to him. I'm going to need help. Someone who understands the technology. Who can work with the FBI to track down every instance of its use and help disable it? You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership. 50-50 ownership of whatever Reed Technologies becomes after this. Because that surveillance system was yours, Daniel. You deserve to profit from it. And I'm going to make sure you do. Daniel thought about the offer. About $400 million he'd turned down versus a legitimate partnership with someone he was starting to trust. About the difference between taking what wasn't his and earning what was. Let me think about it, he said. Right now I just want to go home and hug my daughter. I understand. Isabella smiled, and it reached her eyes this time. Thank you for not taking Nathan's deal, for risking everything to tell the truth. I know what that cost you. Yeah, well, turns out I'm stubborn about stupid things like principles. The world needs more people who are stubborn about principles. Daniel drove home through familiar streets that looked different somehow. Brighter. Like he'd been seeing them through a filter that had finally lifted. He pulled into his driveway just after 3, and Emma came flying out the front door before he'd even cut the engine. Daddy! He caught her up, held her tight, breathed in the kid shampoo smell of her hair. Hey, Bug.
Mrs. Patterson said you had important work stuff. Was it scary? A little bit, but it worked out okay since... Good. Emma pulled back to look at him seriously. Because I was worried. You seemed really worried yesterday, and I didn't like it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. It's okay. But next time, can you just tell me when something's wrong, instead of pretending everything's fine? Daniel felt something catch in his throat. 6 years old, and already she was teaching him how to be better. Yeah, I can do that. I should do that. They went inside. Mrs. Patterson had clearly been stress cleaning. The house was spotless in a way it never was when Daniel was in charge. She took one look at his face and pulled him into a hug. You look exhausted, she said. Long couple of days, but it's over, I think. Good, because this one, she gestured at Emma, has been asking about you every 20 minutes. Daniel spent the afternoon being aggressively normal. He made Emma lunch, they played games. He helped her build an elaborate fort out of couch cushions and blankets. And the whole time, part of his mind was processing everything that had happened, everything that had changed. Nathan Cross was in federal custody. The truth about the surveillance technology was coming out. Isabella was going to rebuild her company. And Daniel had choices now, real choices about his future that weren't dictated by desperation or survival. That evening, after Emma was in bed, Daniel sat on his porch and called Isabella. How are you holding up? He asked. I've been better. The board wants my resignation. Half my executives have already quit. The stock price is in freefall. She paused. But I'm still here, still fighting. And I think we might actually survive this. I've been thinking about your offer, the partnership. And I want to say yes, but I need some conditions. I work remotely most of the time. I'm home for Emma's bedtime every night. And if she needs me, she comes first, always. Done. Anything else? Yeah, we use what we're building to actually help people. Not just to make money or build empires. We create technology that matters for the right reasons. Isabella was quiet for a moment. You know, my husband used to say something similar, that success without purpose was just expensive emptiness. Her voice softened. I forgot that for a while. Started measuring everything in dollars and market share and accolades. Maybe that's why I didn't see what Nathan was doing. I was too focused on winning to ask what winning actually meant. So we build something different, something that values people over profit. I'd like that, I think. Isabella stopped. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. Why did you help me? After what my company did to you, after everything you lost, you could have walked away. Could have let Nathan destroy me. Why didn't you? Daniel thought about it, about the woman who'd shown up on his porch desperate and rain-soaked, about watching her read to Emma with gentle patience, about the way she'd fought to protect his daughter when Nathan threatened them. Because you weren't the person who destroyed my career. You were just the person who bought a company that did. And more than that, Daniel smiled. Because Emma liked you. And she's a pretty good judge of character. Isabella laughed. Well, tell Emma thank you for me. They talked for another hour, planning next steps, building the framework for whatever came next. When Daniel finally hung up, the night was deep and quiet around him. He went upstairs to check on Emma one more time. She was sprawled across her bed in sleep, one arm flung over her stuffed penguin, completely at peace. Daniel stood in the doorway and thought about all the ways this could have gone differently, all the paths that led to darker endings. He could have taken Nathan's money, could have signed the contract, set Emma up for life, and lived with the knowledge that he'd sold himself for $400 million. Part of him had wanted to. The practical part that new money would solve so many problems. But looking at his daughter now, he was glad he'd chosen differently. Because someday Emma would be old enough to understand what had happened, old enough to ask him about the decisions he'd made. And he wanted to be able to tell her the truth without shame, that he'd chosen integrity over comfort, honesty over expedience, the hard right over the easy wrong. The world didn't always reward those choices. Sometimes good people got crushed by those who were willing to lie and cheat and steal. Sometimes justice didn't come. Sometimes the Nathan Crosses of the world won, but not always. Not this time. And that had to matter. Daniel went back downstairs and pulled out his laptop. He had work to do, documentation to organize, testimony to prepare, a future to build. But for the first time in 6 years, the work felt like it was leading somewhere, like it mattered beyond just survival. Over the next 3 months, the story unfolded in pieces. Nathan Cross was indicted on 17 federal charges. His trial became national news, exposing a web of stolen identities and corporate espionage that went back decades. The prosecutors called Daniel as a witness, and he spent 2 days on the stand explaining how his surveillance technology had been stolen and weaponized. Reed Technologies restructured completely. Isabella stepped down as CEO but stayed on as chairman, bringing in new leadership focused on transparency and ethics. The company paid millions in fines and settlements, hemorrhaged value and reputation, but survived. Daniel became a consultant, working with the FBI to track down and disable unauthorized uses of his technology. It was complex, difficult work that required him to be gone sometimes for days at a time. But he kept his promise. Emma always came first. He was home for bedtime. He was present for school events. And slowly, carefully, they built a new kind of normal. 6 months after everything fell apart, Daniel and Emma were invited to Isabella's house for dinner. The grand glass structure felt different now, warmer somehow, less like a museum and more like a place where someone actually lived. Isabella had hired a chef, but she met them at the door herself, smiling. "Emma!" She crouched down. "I have something to show you. Come on, sit." She led Emma to a room Daniel hadn't seen before, a library filled with children's books, and comfortable reading chairs, and a view of the garden. Emma's eyes went wide. "Is this for me?" "It's for whenever you visit. I thought maybe you'd want a place to read while your dad and I talk about boring work stuff." Emma immediately started exploring. Daniel watched her, then turned to Isabella. "You didn't have to do this. I wanted to. She reminds me—" Isabella stopped. "My husband and I were going to have kids before he died. This was supposed to be a nursery, but after he was gone, I couldn't face it. Couldn't figure out what to do with the space." She smiled. "Emma helped me remember that empty rooms don't stay empty forever. They just wait for the right purpose." Dinner was simple and good. Emma talked nonstop about school and penguins and a new friend she'd made. Isabella listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at Emma's jokes. Daniel watched them and saw something he hadn't expected to see. Family. Not in the traditional sense, but in the ways that actually mattered. People who cared about each other. Who showed up. Who chose connection over convenience. After Emma fell asleep on Isabella's couch, worn out from exploring the house, Daniel and Isabella sat on the back patio with coffee. "The FBI thinks they've found all instances of the surveillance technology," Isabella said, "or at least all the ones we can legally access. There might be more in countries that won't cooperate, but we've done what we can." That's something. It's more than something. Because of you, we stopped technology designed for legitimate security from being used to violate privacy on a massive scale. That matters, Daniel. But so does rebuilding your company into something ethical. That couldn't have been easy. Barton, sir, I said. It wasn't, still isn't, but it's the right thing. Isabella looked at him. "I've been thinking about what you said, about measuring success differently, and I realized something. For years, I thought success meant being powerful and important and in control. But those things didn't make me happy. They just made me isolated." "What makes you happy now?" "This. Dinners with people I trust. Work that actually helps people. Knowing that when I look back on my life, I'll see something meaningful instead of just expensive emptiness." She smiled. "Your daughter is teaching me that maybe the most important things are the smallest ones, the ordinary moments that add up to a life worth living." Daniel thought about his own life. About 6 years spent in survival mode, focused only on getting through each day. About how meeting Isabella had forced him to look up, to remember that he was capable of more than just getting by. "I spent a long time being angry," he said, "about what happened with Bennett Systems. About losing my career and my marriage and everything I'd built. But I think maybe—" He stopped, trying to find the right words. "Maybe the loss made room for something better. I wouldn't have Emma if things hadn't fallen apart. Wouldn't have learned what actually matters." "Do you regret it? Any of it?" I regret that Nathan hurt people.
that he stole and lied and destroyed lives for money. But do I regret the path that got me here? Daniel looked through the window at Emma, sleeping peacefully. No, I don't think I do. They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them. Somewhere in a federal prison, Nathan Cross was serving the first year of a 25-year sentence, probably still convinced he'd been smarter than everyone else. Somewhere in the world, other people were making his same choices, prioritizing victory over virtue, profit over people. But here, on this patio, with a sleeping child inside and the night air cooling around them, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of struggle. There would always be struggles. But the deep knowledge that he was living a life aligned with who he actually wanted to be. That when Emma was old enough to really understand, she'd see a father who chose principle over expediency, who valued truth over money, who measured success in ordinary moments and human connections instead of dollars and power. Thank you, Isabella said quietly. For what? For showing me what integrity actually looks like, for not taking the easy path. She met his eyes, for reminding me that some things matter more than winning. Daniel smiled. You would have figured it out. Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to figure it out alone. Yeah. 3 years later, Daniel stood in his backyard watching Emma's 9th birthday party unfold in controlled chaos. Kids ran everywhere, hopped up on cake and ice cream, playing games that seemed to involve a lot of screaming. Isabella was helping coordinate some kind of scavenger hunt, laughing as children raced past her. She came over to Daniel, shaking her head. How do you have the energy for this? I don't. I just pretend until they go home. Smart strategy. Isabella watched Emma directing her friends with the confidence of someone who'd inherited her father's organizational skills. She's getting so big. I know. Terrifying, isn't it? Terrifying and amazing. Isabella pulled out her phone, checked a message. The new security system we designed just got approved for federal use. Fully transparent, privacy protected, everything we talked about building. That's good. Really good. But it is. And it's profitable, which turns out you can do. Make money and be ethical at the same time. Who knew? She smiled. We're changing the industry, Daniel. Slowly, but we're doing it. Daniel looked around his yard. It was the same house he'd lived in for 6 years, but he'd been able to make repairs now, updates, improvements. Emma's college fund was fully funded. His retirement was secure. And more than that, he was doing work that mattered. Work he could be proud of. The path from that rainy night 3 years ago to this moment had been brutal and uncertain and terrifying. But it had also been right. Not perfect. Nothing ever was. But right in the ways that mattered. Emma came running over, followed by a pack of her friends. Dad, Isabella, we need you for the next game. They let themselves be dragged into whatever elaborate activity Emma had planned, and Daniel found himself laughing, actually laughing, surrounded by chaos and cake crumbs and the simple joy of a child's birthday party. Later, after the guests had gone home and Emma was in bed, Daniel sat on his porch like he had that night 3 years ago. But this time he wasn't processing trauma or planning next moves. He was just sitting, being present, grateful. His phone buzzed. A text from Isabella. Thank you for today. Emma's lucky to have you. The world's lucky you chose the hard right over the easy wrong. Daniel typed back. The world's lucky there are people like you willing to rebuild instead of giving up. Thanks for being one of them. He set the phone down and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were still making Nathan's choices, still choosing power over principle, victory over virtue. The world would always have people like that, but it would also have people who chose differently, who measured success in moments like this. Quiet evenings after birthday parties, daughters sleeping peacefully upstairs, partnerships built on trust instead of exploitation. Those people might not get as rich or famous or powerful, but they got something else. Something Nathan had spent his life chasing and never found. They got to be whole, to live without shame, to look their children in the eye and know they'd done right even when it cost them. That was worth more than $400 million, worth more than any amount of money or power or acclaim. It was worth everything. And as Daniel sat on his porch in the quiet night, listening to the sounds of his neighborhood settling in for sleep, He understood something fundamental about the human condition. We're all faced with choices between who we want to be and who it would be easier to be, between integrity and expedience, between the person we are in public and the person we are when no one's watching. Those choices define us. Not our successes or failures, not our wealth or poverty, not our power or lack thereof. Just those quiet moments when we choose who we're going to be, knowing no one might ever know we had the choice at all. Daniel had made his choice, had lived with the consequences, and sitting here now, in his small house with his sleeping daughter and his hard-won peace, he wouldn't change a thing. That was the lesson, the one Emma would someday understand, the one Daniel hoped she'd carry with her into whatever future she built. That winning wasn't the point. Living with integrity was. And sometimes the greatest victory was simply becoming someone you could respect when you looked in the mirror. Everything else was just noise.